It's Halloween, so I'm kind of doing a science news special. Um, and yes, love that. I found a top hat for like 75 cents. It's my favorite thing. So this is now my circus, and I apologize for the mess that the monkeys left. So let's get into this. I found this article actually last month, and I found it really like it's kind of creepy but fascinating too. So I'm just yeah. Um, Archaeologists unearthed the remains of a 17th century female vampire in Poland. And it actually, if you look here, you can see that there's actually a sickle placed across her neck. The vampire folklore across cultures is filled with various tips on how to keep the recently deceased from rising from the grave as an undead fiend who preys on the living. Now, archaeologists have uncovered an unusual example of people using these tips in the 17th century Polish cemetery near, I'm not going to be able to pronounce that, a female skeleton buried with a sickle placed across her neck, as well as a padlock on the big toe of her left foot. Tales of vampire-like creatures date back to at least 4,000 years ago to ancient Mesopotamia. For instance, the Assyrians feared a demon goddess called Lamasatu, literally she who erases, they said killed babies in their cribs while still in the womb. Other ancient texts mention similar creature, Lilith, who also appears in Hebrew texts and folklore, who steals away infants and unborn children. Neither of these could be considered vampires in the modern sense, but they are the precursors to the Greek legend of Lamia, an immortal monster who sucked the blood from young children. In Chinese folklore, another type of proto-vampire, called the Kue, were reanimated corpses that rose from the grave and preyed on the living, as were the Russian Empire, the Indian Vetala, Romanian Strigoi, and Greek Vaikolakas. I apologize to anyone. I'm sure I butchered those words, but I'm trying. News reports specifically referencing vampires didn't appear in English until 1732, as suspected epidemics of vampirism caused mass hysteria that swept across Eastern Europe. By the 19th century, most of Europe was consumed by vampire hysteria, inspiring writers like John Polidori, The Vampire, in 1819, Sheridan Lafranu, Camilla, 1872, and of course Bram Stoker, whose Dracula, 1897, pretty much spawned the modern vampire genre. Now, I did look into this, and it looks like Bram Stoker did base some of his vampire stories on the Indian, where is it? Vetala, yeah. He had lived in India and was really into Indian folklore, so that drastically influenced Dracula. So if you're wondering why why the Count on Sesame Street likes to count, and he's Indian. Anyway, you didn't know that, did you? He is. He's Indian now. Naturally, the fear evoked by the presumed existence of such a creature inspired many different approaches to ensure that the dead stayed dead. In the early Middle Ages, Russian villagers would exhume suspect corpses and destroy the body by cremation, decapitation, or by driving a wooden stake through the heart. Stakes were often secured above the corpses upon burial so that the creature would impale itself if it tried to escape. In Germany and the Western Slavic regions, suspected vampires were decapitated and the head was buried between the feet or away from the body. Other strategies included burying corpses upside down, severing the tendons of the knee, or in the case of the Greek Vaikolakas, placing crosses and inscribed poetry fragments on the chest of the deceased. In places where vampires were believed to suffer from arithmomania, that's the compulsive need to count things. Again, the Count from Sesame Street has to count things. Sheldon from Big Bang Theory also has to count things, and he has like specific. He has to do things in certain numbers, or it doesn't work for him. So a way to, because they believed vampires were obsessed with counting, they would scatter poppy seeds or millet seeds at the site of a suspected vampire. X-Files episode Bad Blood humorously used this bit of folklore when Mulder's favorite snack, sunflower seeds. And it's also used in my favorite book of all time, Carpe Jugglum by Terry Pratchett. I was actually really, really, really lucky to get a signed copy. I am super stoked that I have a signed copy. But you don't have to get a signed copy. This is a really good book. I highly recommend it for many, many reasons. But it's interesting the vampire folklore that's in here that's also in this article. There's things that I didn't know about fighting vampires, apparently. Because who needs to know that? We do. Anyway, the first early medieval graves in the regions near Bide goes. No, I'm sorry, I butchered that, and I apologize. Were discovered between 2005 and 2009 when archaeologists recovered jewelry, semi-precious stones, bronze bowl, and fragments of silk clothing. Darius Polensky of Nicolaus Copernicus University led the archaeological team that returned to the site earlier this year in hopes of discovering more artifacts. That didn't happen, so they turned their attention to the nearby 17th century cemetery in the village of Pien instead. That's when researchers identified a grave containing a female skeleton. Other examples of anti-vampire burials have been found in Poland, according to Polensky. Several skeletons with severed heads were found in 2008, for example, and a body with a brick forced into the mouth and holes drilled through the legs was also found. Ways to protect against the return of the dead include cutting off the head or legs, placing the deceased face down to bite into the ground, burning them, or smashing them with a stone, said Polensky. Nevertheless, this latest find is unique. While there have been reports of people placing scythes or sickles near a grave as an offering to prevent demons from entering the body, placement of this sickle was different. It was not laid flat, but placed on the neck in such a way that if the deceased had tried to get up, it would most likely the head would have been cut off or injured, said Polensky. As for the padlock on the big toe, this symbolizes the closing of a stage and the impossibility of returning. Another unusual feature is that the skeleton appears to be that of a woman of high social status, given the care that she was buried. There also was the remains of a silk cap on her head, which would not have been affordable for a member of a lower class. As for why she would have been buried with such a way, Polensky said that she had very noticeable protruding front teeth, which, yeah. This may have made her appearance different enough that she was deemed a witch or a vampire by superstitious locals. And it makes you wonder what her life would have been like, honestly, because she would have been wealthy, so she would have had she would have had some respect in that sense, but at the same time she would have been feared. And so I just wonder what her life would have been like. And yeah, it's crazy. While doing research through this, I found that in Greece, they believe that vampires can show up if the dead are not buried in consecrated ground. And after World War II, where there was like these massive massacres that happened, and they didn't have enough graves at church sites. And so they were burying the dead in mass graves, and you're burying your loved ones, but you didn't want them to come back as a vampire, so they would do some of these things, like they would decapitate their own loved one's dead body to keep them from coming back as a vampire. And actually, where is it? I was reading this. In Christmas, you think some of this stuff doesn't happen today, but it certainly does. Christmas 2003, in the village of Marotino de Sus, a 76-year-old Romanian man named Peter Toma died. In February 2004, a niece of the deceased revealed that she had been visited by her late uncle. Jorge Maricino, a brother-in-law, became the leader of a vampire hunting group made of several family members. After drinking some alcohol, they dug up the coffin of Petre, made an incision in his chest, and tore the heart out. This is a year after he's dead. Like, well, maybe in February. So it's not a year. It's a couple months, but still, like, they tore the heart out. The body was burned and the ashes mixed in water and drunk by the family, as is customary. However, the Romanian government, anxious to maintain good image in preparation for the country's accession to the European Union, had banned this practice, and 6 family members were arrested. for disturbing the peace of the dead and were imprisoned and sentenced to pay damages to the family of the deceased. Since then, nearby village people drive a fire-hardened stake through the heart or belly of the dead as a preventative. There was another one. During the Romanian Revolution of 1989, the corpse of Nicolae Ceausescu did not receive proper burial. This made the ghost of the former dictator a threat in the minds of superstitious Romanians. Noted revolutionary Galu Voican carpeted the apartment of the conductor with braids of garlic. This is a traditional remedy against this strigoi. Strigoi? I'm not saying that right, but when you start looking into some of this stuff, it's amazing that this stuff is still going on. So, anyway, there's a lot that I could talk about, but it just would make a really long video, so I'm gonna leave it there. I hope you found this as interesting as I did. Maybe that's how I'll have to be buried, is with a sickle over my neck. I don't know. What do you guys think? Is this weird? Do you think it's like, how do you feel about this? Do you think vampires were real? Do you think people can come back from the dead? Considering that these legends existed in pretty much every society from the dawn of time, I don't know. I don't know what to think. So, leave your comments down below. As always, like, share, and subscribe. And thank you for joining me today. Have a lovely day. Bye. I should specify, it's not so much that I believe that vampires are real, so much as I think that people were trying to explain the horrible acts that are done by some individuals, such as Elizabeth Bathory, who is known as the Bloody Countess, who killed up to 650 young girls and possibly bathed in their blood. Things like this are really hard for the human mind to grasp, the torture and murder of people for power. And I think that that's something that happened throughout history and possibly influenced these stories. The story about the Grecian woman whose babies kept being killed by Hera, and so she went insane and started killing other people's babies. That's, like, I honestly believe that something like that happened. Not that a goddess killed her babies, but if you lose enough babies in childbirth or in the first year of their life, it's going to drive you insane. And then there have been women in modern day who have killed babies, and it boggles the mind, and it makes it very difficult to understand why. And so I think a lot of these vampire stories come from people trying to make sense of monstrous behavior. So anyway, I'll end there. Sorry, I just wanted to clarify that. Have a lovely day, happy Halloween, and enjoy.